Some people begin to feel uneasy long before a social event actually happens. Not because anything has gone wrong, but because their body has already started responding. The calendar reminder appears, the message arrives, and something inside tightens quietly. This reaction is often labeled as shyness or avoidance, yet it usually begins deeper than preference or personality. It reflects how the nervous system anticipates stimulation, exposure, and demand. Avoiding social events is rarely about disliking people. It is more often about how the inner system prepares for what those situations require. Understanding this pattern means looking past behavior and into the body's timing, thresholds, and need for regulation. Anticipatory overload and pre-event nervous system activation. For many people who avoid social events, the most intense part happens before they ever arrive. The body begins activating hours or even days in advance. Thoughts replay possible conversations, social roles, and expectations, not consciously chosen, but automatically generated. This anticipatory state consumes energy. Muscles subtly brace, attention narrows, and the mind becomes busy without resolution. While others feel excitement building, these individuals feel their internal resources draining before anything begins. By the time the event approaches, the system already feels overextended. Avoidance is not sudden. It is the final response of a body that has been active for too long without rest. Cognitive fatigue from sustained social self-monitoring. In social settings, some people naturally track themselves from the outside. They notice how they sound, how long they speak, when to respond, and how they are being perceived. This monitoring is quiet but constant. Over time, it creates cognitive fatigue. Attention splits between participation and observation, leaving little space for ease. Even neutral interactions require effort, not because of insecurity, but because awareness remains externally oriented. Avoiding social events reduces this mental load. It allows attention to return inward, where thoughts do not need to be shaped, timed, or adjusted. What appears as withdrawal is often a need to stop watching oneself. Emotional cost of forced visibility and performative presence. Social events often require a visible self, a version that reacts on time, expresses appropriately, and remains emotionally legible to others. For some, maintaining this presence feels less like sharing and more like holding a posture. The emotional cost is subtle. Feelings are filtered, spontaneous responses are delayed, and inner states are managed rather than felt. Nothing is false, yet nothing is fully at rest. Avoidance emerges when this performative state becomes too frequent. Choosing not to attend is not always about fear of judgment. Sometimes it is about protecting the parts of the self that cannot remain open while being observed. Sensitivity to group dynamics and implicit social expectations. Some people do not struggle with conversation itself, but with the invisible structure around it. Group settings carry unspoken rules about timing, energy, attention, and emotional tone. These rules are rarely stated, yet they are strongly felt. For sensitive individuals, this creates constant adjustment. When to speak, when to hold back, how much presence is expected, and how much absence is tolerated. None of this feels dramatic, but it accumulates quietly. Avoiding social events reduces exposure to these implicit demands. It is not resistance to people, but relief from navigating layers of expectation that never fully turn off. Avoidance as a protective regulation strategy rather than fear. Avoidance is often mistaken for fear, but in many cases, it functions more like regulation. The body learns, through experience, which environments lead to depletion and which allow recovery. Over time, patterns form without conscious decision. Skipping a social event may bring a sense of immediate calm, not relief from anxiety, but a return to equilibrium. The nervous system recognizes fewer demands and responds by settling. In this context, avoidance is not a flaw. It is a signal that the system is protecting itself from overload, even if the mind later questions the choice. Withdrawal as a signal for unmet psychological conditions. When social avoidance becomes frequent, it often points to something missing rather than something broken. The conditions needed for safe participation may not be present. Pace, autonomy, emotional room, or genuine connection may feel absent. Withdrawal then becomes communicative, even if no words are used. It says that participation, as currently structured, costs more than it gives. Understanding this shifts the focus from forcing engagement to recognizing what the self requires in order to remain open without strain. Avoiding social events is rarely about disliking others or lacking social ability. It reflects how a person's nervous system manages anticipation, attention, and emotional exposure. When seen through this lens, avoidance becomes meaningful rather than problematic. It points toward a need for environments where presence does not require performance, and connection does not demand constant self-adjustment.